Over the course of this channel, I have shown a lot of resentment for MatPat in game theory. At least at some point I did dislike him greatly, but as it currently stands I don't hold anything against MatPat. Watching GT Live gives you a better view into the kind of person Matt actually is, while game theory has him display an exaggerated ego for entertainment. And even when I was resentful, I only criticized him because I liked his content. Theorizing about the lore of video games is one of my favorite pastimes, so when the biggest person doing that is kinda screwing up, I want to bring attention to that in hopes that he will improve. And Matt clearly agrees, as seen in his final video. Still, let's take a trip through memory lane and look at each main point of criticism I once made for old Matthew Patthew. The first flaw in game theory is how it often defaults to using actual real-world science for its theories, when 9 times out of 10, the game world will operate on its own rules and not coincide with reality. And beyond that, MatPat has a higher IQ than most people, and a lot more knowledge about science than the average game dev. MatPat assumes that everyone is on the same wavelength as him, but I can bet $100 Scott Cawthon had no idea how much force it would take to crush a child's skull. And this mindset can apply to more than just science. But let's go into specific examples of MatPat fumbling the ball. First, with bad theories. The Kirby theories. Despite being one of the most easily theorizable series, MatPat somehow fails on all 3 theories. His first theory is the amoeba theory. MatPat states that Kirby is a single-celled organism, and I made a video 2 years ago called Debunking MatPat's Theory with a Single Sentence, and it's still true. Kirby has eyes, and eyes are made up of over 100 million cells. This is a clear example of Matt's confirmation bias, looking so deeply into evidence that supports your side that you completely overlook the debunking evidence that is literally staring you right in the face all episode. The second theory is one that everyone was quick to laugh at. This theory was basically just saying that Kirby is a threat to the universe because he's strong and dumb, and tries to catalog all of Kirby's bad actions. We've seen what happens when people use that mindset. Galactonite was sealed away for fear of his power, when nothing anywhere actually says he used that power for anything evil. A major flaw with this whole theory is it relies a lot on Kirby killing enemies as a sin. Nowadays, it's been confirmed by HAL that when Kirby eats an enemy, the enemy just gets warped somewhere else in the world, but even back then, the canonicity of enemies is dubious. The moment you walk off screen and back, they're back. And a lot of these characters in lore should only be one, yet we come across countless of them. And nothing obligates you to kill the enemies in the first place, so it's not like there's an exact way for this game to be played that's canon. Even with mini-bosses who are obligated to defeat, there should only be one Chef Kawasaki and Bugsy, yet we can come across multiple at the same time. Now, I'm not going to make a big rebuttal to every point made against Kirby's actions, since Meteors already did a much better video of that, but something that's always bugged me is, why do people think Kirby did wrong in Milky Way Wishes? The sun and moon were fighting. Who knows what kind of astronomically dangerous effects that could have on the world? Just ignoring it wasn't an option, and Marx wasn't even lying. Kirby really did need to go to all those planets and collect the star power to summon Nova. Marx, or not, Kirby would still be taking the same path fighting all the same bosses. All Marx does is jump in at the last second. It's not like Kirby was working with Marx, he was just a random stranger that shared his wisdom. And while Squeak Squad is the least justifiable game, slow down the footage and you can actually see that a Waddle Dee is the one who stole the cake. And as we know over here on the Super Kirby channel, Waddle Dees don't act on their own, only under the order of a leader. So it most likely was in fact Dedede who initially stole the cake. Finally, the manual for Kirby's Adventure is most likely not canon, as is the manual with Kirby's Dream Land and all the manuals, because why would they be? Now, the biggest flaw of this video is its downright manipulative ordering of Kirby's screw-ups in the wrong order to make it seem like Kirby was getting progressively worse with each adventure. Overall, this isn't even a theory, it's just an observation of Kirby's character. Then there's the third theory, which isn't a fail itself, but the fact that it was made in place of what would have been an actually correct theory about Kirby's connection to Void, but he didn't make that because of the backlash from the other theory, so instead he just made a theory about the science of Kirby flying. Just because Kirby is a reincarnation of an eldritch god doesn't make him evil. GUI is living proof of this. Making this theory would not have been propagating the evil Kirby theory. Now, on the topic of beloved characters being evil, you may wonder where I stand on the Mario is mental video. Personally, I think it's mostly correct. Sure, it exaggerates how many evil things Mario does, and doesn't acknowledge any of the moments where Mario does express empathy and kindness, but unless I'm missing some crucial context because I haven't finished Mario Wonder, the trailer made it canon that Mario attacked harmless enemies unprovoked. So, another Nintendo fail is the Metroid Fusion one, where MatPat is just objectively wrong. He claims the animals that Samus saves in Super Metroid could be the X-Parasite, but in Metroid Fusion, Samus scans them and confirms that they are not the X-Parasite. I think this theory in particular reveals something that should have been obvious from the start about game theory. Game theory is more about bringing up interesting ideas and topics rather than solving every game's lore. This theory only exists to comment on the dispute over speedrunners leaving the animals to die in Super Metroid, not trying to be an actual prediction of a plot of a future game involving animal imposters. And this might be the reason why I and so many others had so much disdain for game theory. Some of us treat solving these franchises' lore as our life, and some people probably make their life's income off of it. So there's a large difference of interest between game theory, the channel, and game theorists, the group of people. As for the shortcomings of the Hollow Knight video, just go watch Mossbag's debunking. So, those are the theories that come to mind, but bad theories aren't the only thing that have gotten people upset about MatPat. There are a lot of things he's been scrutinized for, and a lot of which I feel are completely unwarranted, so I'll only mention the things I had issue with, and point out every point I made in this enormous 200+ reply thread that I accidentally created, and flashed a couple times in videos as a joke. Hopefully, for real this time, we can finally put to rest this waste of a thread. The first thing I mentioned is how MatPat constantly used Undertale for clickbait on GT Live. He didn't link the games he was playing, and misspelled the name of the studio who made Heartbound. Supposedly, MatPat isn't the one who put all these ridiculous tags in the description, but even still, he won't stop comparing these games to Undertale during the actual live streams. But from MatPat's perspective, Earthbound is his single favorite game of all time, so Undertale, being a spiritual successor to it, made him very happy, and when he saw other games following in its footsteps, he wanted to get the attention of the Undertale fanbase so it can be as popular as Undertale is. But we know Toby Fox himself called him out for these bad decisions, mostly because Toby doesn't want these games to piggyback off of Undertale and wants them to stand alone and be recognized as their own thing. And, as expected, everyone sided with Toby. Even though MatPat defended himself, he clearly was also in agreement, because from that day, the description of every GT Live video was renovated based on the criticism. Recently, because the internet randomly decided they like MatPat now, like seriously, for ages people hated MatPat, and then suddenly it just switched. I don't know when that happened, but anyway, back on topic. I've seen some people say that Toby was actually in the wrong somehow, which is really annoying when someone actually takes accountability for their actions, and then some annoying stans show up to say, actually they didn't do anything wrong, and whoever dared to call them out is actually wrong. And just to be clear, while Toby was also upset about him bringing up the Earthbound Halloween hack back into public eye, Toby Fox does not hold any grudge against MatPat like some people would have you believe, and made this drawing for his retirement. A couple years later, Matt would try to pull the same thing with Omori, just calling it Earthbound instead of Undertale. But you can immediately tell he's treating this game as it is Undertale because he thinks there's a pacifist playthrough. The entire Omori community then agreed to gatekeep MatPat out of it, and look, seems that they were successful because MatPat never finished the game. More controversial and invalid points aside, this will always stand out as MatPat's biggest offense because it happened at GT Live, where he's at his most genuine. You can excuse the other stuff as just a persona or company mandate, but this is when MatPat's at his true self. Even still, this isn't anything too serious. My second point is that MatPat's just egotistical. Here's some examples that come to mind, but as said earlier, the ego is scripted and exaggerated.
Mic drop. So yeah, if you're not convinced at this point, you're just being stubborn.
My third point is MatPat is just a bit too defensive when he's wrong. In the Hollow Knight theory, MatPat admits to cutting important info due to time constraints, and in the third Among Us video, he will point out a comment that said he was milking Among Us, and argue that 2 back-to-back videos isn't milking. He would then proceed to make 2 more Among Us videos, which were just as meaningless and irrelevant as the first 2. Why would you get defensive about something and then immediately continue doing the thing you swear you didn't do? Next point was about the lack of quality control for what he covers lately, but what I didn't think about at the time is everything past December 20, 2022 is not run by MatPat. It's run by the company Lunar X, so the constant covering of trash like Garten of Banban and Poppy Playtime might be the decision of some out-of-touch CEO, not MatPat. I took particular attention to the Skibidi Toilet Theory, not because I didn't like it. It was completely wrong, completely overlooking the unlisted demand video. I did a video on that too. But it was still a fine video. But it kind of crosses a line. Skibidi Toilet is not an original piece of media like everything else he's covered. It's a meme, made out of things that already exist on the internet. Is there really a point of taking it seriously? Now, you may be shocked to know there are actually people who make theories on other unserious fan-made stuff like Super Mario Logan videos. And believe it or not, even my old awful plush tale videos have secret lore and an overarching plot happening in the background. But do I really expect anyone to care or pay attention to it? Just needed to bring it up to plug my plush videos again. Please go watch them, they're way more fun than making these commentary videos. I also might talk about this in greater detail in a future video, so stay tuned. And then what about the few fan projects that actually have somewhat serious stories and a lot of thought put into them, like Terminal Montage or SMG4? Why don't they get theories? At the end of the day, the only reason this Hellspawn got a theory and other things didn't is because of its popularity. But again, we can scapegoat this to the company. Something I've already talked about in great detail is MatPat giving more attention to Poppy Playtime and indirectly giving it more support. MatPat is no stranger to bringing attention to serious issues in these communities, so why does he just ignore all the messed up things that Mob did? And just to be clear, this company is still doing shady things. People are still leaving this company over unexplained creative differences. And while I've said many times, what's stopping Game Theory from doing a video on Venge? I haven't actually played Venge, so it's possible it's a game with a complete story and doesn't need a theory. And while I find that unlikely, just based on the kind of game it is, they've still done theories on games with complete stories. But don't worry, as soon as I get my epic gaming setup set up, a blind Venge playthrough is one of the first things on my list to play. I got particularly mad at Matt playing Enchanted Portals on GT Live, and I've also done a bunch of videos on why that game sucks. Could of course be Lunar X's doing, and at the end of the video, MatPat even does say it's ripping off Cuphead. MatPat giving Undertale to the Pope seemed a bit unjustified to get mad at, but he does put down the other gifts as a mean to justify his, and while he does make valid points against them, it was just unnecessary to mention. MatPat puffing up his chest about the good things he does is something he does from time to time. It's hard to really say whether that's good or bad, because the things he does are still actually good, it's just talking about them in this way seems a little bit egotistical. It looks like some of the comments from that thread disappeared, but I definitely remember calling out this particular video because, oh boy, this is probably the most insecure MatPat has ever been. The whole video is just him responding to comments from literal children taking his words seriously and personally. Now, personally, I'm actually a fan of the Gregbot theory, but this video is one of the most unwarranted and saddest things MatPat has ever made. Funnily enough, he actually does raise a good point about toxicity in theorist and, as I called them, anti-theorist communities, something I've talked about myself. But MatPat should know his audience is mostly children and that these particular people aren't the ones that need to be called out for this behavior. And while this wasn't in the thread, I also noticed MatPat being a bit questionable in his Air Up sponsorship, talking as if it was something he genuinely loved, but if you look at other tubers sponsors of this same thing, they say that same thing. And people not sponsored say that it's not all that, or even a scam. Definitely takes a point off of MatPat's genuinity. So that's a summary of everything I said in that thread, and where I stand on my points now. Hopefully, no one will ever comment on that thread again, unless they came from this video. But still, just comment on this video, not in the thread. There is one more thing of note that somewhat justifies all the clickbait and the milking of popular topics and insecure sponsorships. And that is, apparently, during the transition from creator to company, as each video was becoming more grandiose, According to this interview called The Real Reason MatPat Left YouTube, MatPat lost $250,000 in order to make those changes. So, being in this constant battle for views and money actually kind of makes sense, even if it's still a bit messed up. I'm sure they could have just slowed down with all the expensive changes, but it's a lot more understandable than your average Poppy Playtime content farm that just makes money for the sake of it. So that brings us to now. Was I wrong about a lot of these things? Yes. But was I wrong for calling out the things that I felt were bad in the first place? Listen to what MatPat said in his final video.
And yeah, there have been plenty of times where I've missed the mark, where you weren't happy about a topic, or where I said something wrong, or my research was bad, or whatever, and I needed to learn about that. And so you, acting exactly as you should, according to that trust game, you called me out in those moments. You showed me that I had made a mistake. But more importantly, you were willing to forgive. You gave me a chance to learn and grow as a creator and as a person. And look.
MatPat is on board with the idea of calling him out. He knows the bad things he's done, and he's done his best to improve from his mistakes. The important thing is to have unity. We aren't calling people out to destroy or cancel them. We call out their bad behavior to help rebuild them, and if they're successful, we can join them instead of discard them. Of course, there are many individuals on the internet who are way too far gone, but MatPat is not one of those people. So in the end, I have a newfound respect for MatPat, and don't hold any of these things against him. It's clear to me that leaving YouTube was partly because doing these things was hurting his own integrity, even if he never outright said this. The company LunarX is more to blame with all of MatPat's recent blunders, and we can see that nothing has really changed after he left. There's also no point of rallying against Tom for covering Poppy Playtime and anything else bad that happens, because it's probably not his decision either. So yeah, that's all I really have to say regarding MatPat and game theory for now. If there's one thing I hope, it's that more MatPat and game theory fans will become more understanding and take his words about forgiveness and unity to heart. Please watch my plush video.